My name is Natalie, and I am 34 years old. I thought I had everything figured out. A loving husband, a beautiful baby girl, a life that looked perfect from the outside. But that night at the family dinner table, when everyone laughed at me when they questioned whether my daughter was even my husband's, I realized how quickly trust can crumble. I sat there listening to their cruel jokes, feeling my heart break. But I had something they did not know about, something that would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know, have you ever been doubted by the people who were supposed to love you most? Drop a comment below and let me know where you are watching from. And if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button because this story is for you. Now let me take you back to where it all started. Brian and I got married 3 years ago in a ceremony that felt like a dream. We met at a marketing conference in Seattle, one of those stuffy corporate events where everyone tries to network over lukewarm coffee and dry sandwiches. I was presenting a portfolio of design work for a tech startup, and he was there representing his financial advisory firm. We started talking during a lunch break, and something just clicked. He had this easy smile and a way of listening that made me feel heard. By the end of the conference, we had exchanged numbers, and within 6 months, we were inseparable. Brian worked as a financial advisor, helping wealthy clients manage their investments and plan for retirement. His family had a reputation in our community. They were well respected, involved in charity events, the kind of people whose names appeared in the local newspaper for donating to good causes. I was a graphic designer working remotely from our apartment, creating logos and branding materials for small businesses. My job gave me flexibility, which I loved. I could work in my pajamas, take breaks to walk around the neighborhood, and set my own schedule. Our marriage started off sweet and easy. We spent weekends exploring hiking trails in the Cascade Mountains, trying new restaurants downtown, and having date nights where we would cook elaborate meals together and pretend we were on a cooking show. Brian would make me laugh by doing terrible impressions of celebrity chefs. We talked about the future constantly, where we wanted to travel, what kind of house we would buy someday, and most importantly, when we wanted to start a family. When I found out I was pregnant, it felt like the final piece of our perfect life falling into place. I took the test on a Sunday morning in March while Brian was still sleeping. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at those two pink lines, tears streaming down my face. When I woke him up to tell him, he pulled me into his arms and whispered, "We are going to be parents." We spent the entire day making plans. We converted the spare bedroom into a nursery painting, the walls a soft yellow color that would work for either a boy or a girl. We bought a crib, a changing table, and more tiny clothes than any baby could possibly need. The pregnancy was not easy. I had morning sickness that lasted all day for the first trimester. I could barely keep food down, and the smell of coffee, which I used to love, made me nauseous. But Brian was supportive during those early months. He would rub my back when I was sick, make me ginger tea, and reassure me that it would get better. And it did. By the second trimester, I started to feel human again. My belly grew, and I felt our baby kick for the first time while I was working on a design project. I called Brian immediately, and he rushed home from work to feel it too. Emma was born on a cold evening in early March. Labor lasted 14 hours, and I have never been so exhausted in my life. But the moment they placed her in my arms, everything else disappeared. She had dark hair, more than I expected for a newborn, and these bright, alert eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Brian stood beside me, crying happy tears, taking what must have been 100 photos on his phone. He kept saying, "She is perfect. You are perfect." The first 2 months of being a mother were the hardest thing I had ever done. People talk about sleepless nights, but nothing prepares you for the reality of waking up every 2 hours to feed a crying baby. I felt like I was living in a fog, moving through each day on autopilot. I would wake up at 5 in the morning when Emma started fussing, change her diaper, feed her, burp her, and try to get her back to sleep before starting the whole cycle over again. My body ached from the birth, and I had no time to take care of myself. Showers became a luxury. Brian helped at first. He would take the night shift on weekends so I could get a few hours of uninterrupted sleep. But as the weeks went on, he started saying he was too busy at work. He would come home late, exhausted, and go straight to bed. I understood that he had responsibilities that his job was demanding, but I also felt abandoned. I was the one doing everything: feeding, changing, bathing, soothing Emma when she cried in the middle of the night. I loved being her mother, but I was also drowning in loneliness. Despite the exhaustion, Emma brought me so much joy. She started smiling at around 6 weeks, these big, gummy grins that made my heart melt. She would follow me with her eyes when I walked across the room, and she loved when I sang to her, even though I have a terrible voice. I took photos of her constantly and posted them on social media. Friends and family commented about how beautiful she was, how lucky we were. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Laura came to visit when Emma was about a month old. Laura was Brian's older sister, 36 years old, and she always seemed to have her life together. She worked as a real estate agent and was incredibly successful at it. She wore expensive clothes, drove a luxury car, and had 2 sons who were 5 and 7 years old. When she walked into our apartment that day, she was dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored pants, looking like she had just stepped out of a magazine. Meanwhile, I was wearing sweatpants with spit up on my shoulder and had not washed my hair in 3 days. She leaned over the bassinet where Emma was sleeping and studied her for a long moment. "She is cute," Laura finally said, but her voice lacked the warmth I expected from an aunt meeting her niece. She straightened up and looked at me. "Does she look like Brian to you?" The question caught me off guard. "She is only a month old," I said with a laugh, trying to keep my tone light. "Babies do not really look like anyone yet. They change so much." Laura nodded slowly, but there was something in her eyes. Something calculating. "I suppose you are right. My boys looked exactly like Derek from day one. Everyone commented on it. But I guess every baby is different." After she left, I could not shake the uncomfortable feeling her visit had left behind. Why would she ask that? What was she implying? I told myself I was being paranoid, that Laura was probably just making conversation. Maybe she was disappointed Emma was not a boy, or maybe she was jealous that her brother finally had a daughter when she only had sons. I pushed the thoughts away and focused on taking care of Emma. But deep down, something had shifted. A tiny seed of doubt had been planted not in my mind about Emma, but about how Brian's family saw me. The first family dinner after Emma was born happened when she was about 10 weeks old. Brian's parents, Patricia and Richard, hosted these dinners once a month at their house in the suburbs. Their home was the kind of place that belonged in a magazine spread about perfect American families. It had a manicured lawn, a front porch with rocking chairs, and an interior decorated with family photos and expensive furniture. The dining room had a long wooden table that could seat 10 people, and Patricia always set it with cloth napkins and her good china. That evening, everyone was there. Patricia and Richard sat at opposite ends of the table. Laura and her husband Derek sat on one side with their 2 boys who were already bored and fidgeting in their seats. Brian and I sat on the other side with Emma in her car seat on the chair beside me. She was asleep, blissfully unaware of the tension I was starting to feel. Patricia had made pot roast one of Brian's favorite meals from childhood. The smell filled the house, rich and savory. Everyone passed dishes around, serving themselves roasted potatoes, carrots, and thick slices of beef. The conversation flowed easily at first. Derek talked about a house he was trying to flip, and Laura jumped in with advice about staging and curb appeal. Richard asked Brian about work, and they discussed the stock market and interest rates. I sat quietly cutting my food into small bites and trying to stay engaged, but I mostly felt like an observer in someone else's family gathering. Halfway through the meal, Patricia set down her fork and looked over at Emma's car seat. "She really is beautiful," Patricia said, but then her expression shifted slightly. "But I still cannot see who she takes after. I keep trying to find Brian in her face, but I just do not see it." Richard chuckled, trying to diffuse what was starting to feel awkward. "Babies change so much in the first year. Give it time." But Laura, who had been unusually quiet, decided to chime in. "You know, I was reading an article about genetics the other day. It said that babies usually look like their fathers at first because of evolution. Something about making sure the father knows the baby is his." I felt my stomach tighten. Was she really bringing this up again? At a family dinner. "That is interesting," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "But Emma has features from both sides of the family. She has my mother's eyes and my hair color." Laura smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Sure, but my boys looked exactly like Derek from day one. Everyone who saw them said so. There was never any question." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Brian shifted uncomfortably beside me, but said nothing. Patricia quickly changed the subject, asking Derek about his job, and the conversation moved on. But I could barely eat after that. My hands were shaking as I cut my vegetables. I felt humiliated, judged, and worst of all, unsupported by my own husband, who had not said a single word to defend me. Over the next few weeks, the comments continued. Every time we saw Laura, she found a way to bring up Emma's appearance. Her hair is so dark. Does anyone in Brian's family have dark hair? Or, those brown eyes are so unusual. Brian's whole family has blue or green eyes. Patricia started joining in too, reminiscing about how Brian was such a blonde baby with bright blue eyes, making it sound like a pointed comparison. I started pulling out old photo albums, looking at pictures of Brian as a baby and comparing them to Emma. I found a few similarities. They had the same chin, the same shape to their ears. But I had to admit, Emma did not look much like Brian overall. She looked like me. She looked like my side of the family, and apparently that was a problem. One night, I could not take it anymore. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and started searching for information. I looked at Emma's baby photos next to mine, and the resemblance was striking. Same dark hair, same wide eyes, same little nose. Then I looked at Brian's baby photos again. He had been a chubby blonde baby with a round face. Emma was slender with delicate features and dark coloring. They were different, but that did not mean anything. Genetics are complicated. Children do not always look like carbon copies of their parents. I knew this logically, but the constant comments were wearing me down. Brian's behavior started changing too. He came home later and later from work, always with an excuse. Busy season at the firm, important clients, deadlines. When he was home, he seemed distant. He would hold Emma if I asked him to, but he did not seek her out. He did not get up with her at night anymore. He did not offer to help with baths or feedings. It felt like he was pulling away from both of us, and I did not understand why. One evening, I asked him if everything was okay. We were sitting on the couch, and Emma was finally asleep in her crib. "You seem stressed," I said carefully. "Is work really that busy, or is something else going on?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes. Doubt, suspicion. It was gone in a flash, replaced by a tired smile. "Just work," he said. "Nothing to worry about." But I did worry. I worried constantly. Something was wrong, and I could not figure out what it was. The morning I found Brian's search history, I was not snooping. I need to make that clear. My laptop had died, and I needed to check my email for a client deadline. I grabbed Brian's laptop from his home office, opened it, and went to log into my email. But when I opened the browser, his search history was right there. How accurate are paternity tests? DNA testing cost. Can you do paternity test without mother knowing? I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands started shaking. I read the searches over and over, hoping I was misunderstanding, but there was no other way to interpret them. My husband thought Emma might not be his daughter. He thought I had cheated on him. I closed the laptop and sat there in his office chair, trying to process what I had just seen. Rage and heartbreak battled inside me. How could he think that I had been faithful to him every single day of our relationship? I had never even looked at another man. And yet, because his family had planted these seeds of doubt because Emma did not have blonde hair and blue eyes, he was questioning whether she was his. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I took several deep breaths and tried to think rationally. I needed to confront him, but I needed to do it calmly. That evening when Brian came home from work, I was waiting for him. Emma was already asleep. I had spent the entire day rehearsing what I wanted to say, but the moment I saw him walk through the door, all my carefully planned words disappeared. "I saw your search history," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. He froze his briefcase still in his hand. "What?" "On your laptop. DNA tests, paternity tests. Do you want to explain that to me?" His face went pale, and for a moment he said nothing. Then he set his briefcase down and ran a hand through his hair. "Natalie, I can explain." "Please do," I said, crossing my arms. "Please explain to me why my husband, the father of my child, is researching paternity tests behind my back." "I was not serious about it," he said quickly. "I was just curious. It did not mean anything." Curious? I felt my voice rising. You were curious about whether your own daughter is yours. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? It is not like that, he said, stepping closer. Look, my family keeps saying things, and I just wanted to put it to rest. I wanted to prove them wrong. By doubting me! Tears were streaming down my face now. By questioning my faithfulness, Brian, I have never been with anyone else. Not once. Not ever. How can you not know that? He looked at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. I do know that. But Laura kept saying things to me. She kept asking if I was sure if I had any doubts. She said you were home alone all day while I was at work and that you could have... Could have what? I demanded. Had an affair with who? The mailman. The grocery store cashier. I barely leave the house except to take Emma for walks. I am with her 24 hours a day. When exactly would I have time to cheat on you? I know, he said miserably. I know it does not make sense. But once the doubt was there, I could not get it out of my head. I stared at him, this man I had married, this man I had built a life with, and I felt something inside me break. You chose them over me. You chose to believe your sister's poisonous insinuations instead of trusting your wife. That is not fair, he said. No, I said quietly. What is not fair is being doubted by the person who promised to love and trust me. What is not fair is being accused of something I did not do while I am home alone exhausted taking care of our daughter by myself because you are too busy to help. What is not fair is realizing that my husband does not actually know who I am. He tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. He nodded, his face crumpling. Natalie, I am sorry. I really am. But his apology felt hollow. The damage was done. He had doubted me, and I did not know if I could ever forgive that. That night, lying in bed with Emma sleeping in her crib beside me, I made a decision. I was going to get a DNA test done. Not because I had any doubt about Emma's paternity, but because I needed proof. I needed to be able to look Brian and his entire family in the eye and show them exactly how wrong they were. I needed to vindicate myself. The next morning after Brian left for work, I started researching DNA testing companies. I found a reputable lab that offered discrete testing with results in 3 weeks. I ordered the kit online and had it shipped to Amy's address so Brian would not see it arrive. When the kit came, I carefully followed the instructions. I swabbed the inside of Emma's cheek while she was sleeping, her tiny mouth relaxing around the cotton swab. Then came the harder part. I needed a sample from Brian. I waited until he was in the shower one morning, then took his toothbrush from the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I sealed it in the provided bag. I felt like I was doing something wrong, something sneaky, but I reminded myself that I had every right to prove my innocence. I mailed the samples that afternoon and then waited. 3 weeks felt like an eternity. Every day I checked the tracking information online, watching as the samples made their way to the lab, were processed and analyzed. During those 3 weeks, Brian and I barely spoke. We moved around each other like strangers sharing the same space. He tried to apologize several more times, but I could not bring myself to accept it. The trust was broken. And then, in the middle of those agonizing 3 weeks, I discovered something that changed everything. Brian had been more protective of his phone lately. He never left it lying around anymore, always keeping it in his pocket or face down on the table. One evening he was in the shower and his phone was charging on the nightstand. It buzzed with a text message and the preview lit up the screen. Miss you. When can we meet again? The message was from a number that was not saved in his contacts. My heart sank. With trembling fingers, I picked up the phone and entered his passcode. He had never changed it from our wedding anniversary, which felt like a cruel irony. I opened the messages and started reading. My vision blurred with tears as I scrolled through weeks of conversations between Brian and someone named Stephanie. The messages were flirty, intimate, full of inside jokes and plans to meet up. Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive again. Last night was amazing. I scrolled further back. The messages started months ago. Some of them were from when I was still pregnant. While I was growing our child, suffering through nausea and exhaustion preparing for our baby's arrival, he was texting another woman. While I was in labor for 14 hours, he had texted her, "Wish I was with you instead." There were photos too. Pictures of Stephanie, a blonde woman who looked to be in her early 30s, smiling at the camera. Pictures of them together at restaurants I had never been to. My husband had been living a double life, and I had been completely oblivious. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every photo, every damning piece of evidence. I sent them all to my own email address, then deleted the sent messages so he would not know I had found out. I put his phone back exactly where it had been and walked out of the bedroom. I felt numb, like I was moving through water. Everything was muted and distant. My husband had accused me of cheating while he was the one having an affair. He had let his family humiliate me, question my integrity, and suggest that Emma might not be his all while he was betraying me with another woman. The hypocrisy was staggering. 2 days later, the DNA test results arrived. I opened the envelope alone in my car parked outside a grocery store. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper and read the results. Probability of paternity 99.99%. Emma was Brian's daughter. Of course she was. I had never doubted it. But now I had proof. I had undeniable scientific proof. And I also had proof of his affair. The monthly family dinner was scheduled for that Saturday, just 3 days away. As I sat in my car, holding the DNA results in one hand and thinking about the screenshots on my phone, a plan formed in my mind. I was done being the victim. I was done being humiliated and doubted and disrespected. It was time to flip the script. I went to a print shop and had everything printed out. The DNA test results on official letterhead. The text message screenshots dated and time-stamped. I put everything in a plain white envelope and sealed it. Then I waited for Saturday. Saturday evening arrived cold and gray with clouds threatening rain. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress that made me feel strong and put together. I did Emma's hair, putting a tiny bow in her dark curls, and dressed her in a pink outfit that made her look angelic. Brian asked if I was okay, noticing that I was quieter than usual, but I just smiled and said I was fine. We drove to his parents' house in silence. Brian tried to make small talk, commenting on the weather and asking if I had finished a design project I had been working on, but I gave short answers. I was focused on what was about to happen, running through scenarios in my mind, preparing myself. When we arrived, Patricia opened the door with her usual warm smile, but I noticed how her eyes immediately went to Emma, scanning her face like she was looking for something. Laura and Derek were already in the living room. Laura's 2 boys were playing with toy cars on the floor, making crashing noises. Richard was in his recliner watching a football pregame show. "You are here," Patricia said, ushering us inside. "Dinner is almost ready. I made baked chicken tonight with roasted vegetables." We settled into the living room, and I set Emma's car seat on the floor beside the couch. She was awake, looking around with curious eyes. Laura came over and leaned down to look at her. "She is getting so big," Laura said. "4 months already." "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "Time flies," Laura said, straightening up. She glanced at Brian, then back at me. "She is cute. I just wish I could see more of the family resemblance, you know." I said nothing, just smiled tightly. Patricia called us to the dining room, and we all moved to take our seats. The table was set beautifully as always, with candles flickering in the center and the good dishes laid out. I sat down with Emma's car seat beside my chair, and Brian sat next to me. Laura and Derek sat across from us with their boys at the far end of the table where they could not cause too much trouble. Patricia and Richard took their usual spots at the heads of the table. Dinner started normally enough. Patricia passed around the chicken and vegetables, and everyone filled their plates. Derek talked about a difficult client who kept changing their mind about house renovations. Brian mentioned that his firm was considering expanding to a new office location. The conversation was light and unremarkable. Then, about 20 minutes into the meal, Patricia set down her fork and looked at Emma, who had started to fuss a little in her car seat. I picked her up and held her in my lap, bouncing her gently to soothe her. "You know," Patricia said thoughtfully, "I was looking through old photo albums this week. Pictures of Brian when he was a baby. He was such a beautiful blonde baby with the brightest blue eyes." "He was adorable," Laura agreed. She looked directly at me. "I really cannot see much of that in Emma, though. She looks so different." The table went quiet for a moment. I could feel everyone's eyes on me on Emma. this was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when they would reveal their true thoughts. Laura laughed, a sound that was meant to seem casual but came out sharp. I mean, too bad your baby looks nothing like your husband. Silence fell over the table like a heavy blanket. I looked around at all of them, their faces showing varying degrees of discomfort. Patricia looked down at her plate. Derek shifted in his seat. Richard cleared his throat but said nothing. And then Brian, my husband, the man who was supposed to defend me, let out an uncomfortable laugh. Come on, Laura. Maybe she has a secret we do not know about. I felt like I had been slapped. I turned to look at him and he would not meet my eyes. He was trying to laugh it off, trying to play it cool in front of his family, and in doing so, he was throwing me under the bus. Laura laughed louder now, encouraged by Brian's response. Right, I mean, you never know these days. Derek chuckled nervously. Richard let out a small laugh, shaking his head. Even Patricia smiled, though she tried to hide it behind her napkin. They were all laughing. They were laughing at me at the suggestion that I had been unfaithful, that my daughter was not my husband's. They were laughing at my expense, treating my life and my integrity like it was some kind of joke. Something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with clarity. This was who they really were. This was what they really thought of me, and I was done accepting it. I stood up slowly, still holding Emma in my arms. Everyone stopped laughing and looked at me with surprise. I walked over to my purse, which I had left on the sideboard, and pulled out the white envelope. The room was completely silent now, except for the sound of Emma cooing softly. I walked back to the table and stood beside Brian's chair. I looked down at him, at this man I had loved and trusted, and I felt nothing but disappointment. Since we are sharing secrets tonight, I said, my voice calm and clear, I think you should open this. I placed the envelope on the table in front of him. Brian looked up at me confused. What is this? Open it, I said. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. Patricia leaned forward. Natalie, maybe this is not the best time. No, I interrupted, turning to face her. This is exactly the right time. You have all been questioning my integrity for months. You have been making jokes and insinuations about my faithfulness. So let's settle this once and for all. Laura's smile had faded. Natalie, we were just joking around. You do not need to. Open it, Brian, I repeated, ignoring Laura. Brian's hands were shaking as he picked up the envelope. He tore it open and pulled out the first document. I watched his face as he read it, watched his eyes widen, watched the color drain from his cheeks. What is it? Richard asked, his voice gruff. Brian's voice was barely a whisper. It is a DNA test result. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Laura sat up straight, her eyes wide. Derek looked between me and Brian, clearly lost. Read it out loud, I said, my voice steady. I want everyone to hear. Brian swallowed hard and read from the paper. Probability of paternity 99.99%. Brian Matthews is the biological father. Silence. Complete and utter silence. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. Laura spoke first, her voice thin. You got a paternity test. Yes, I said, looking directly at her. Because apparently my word was not good enough. Because apparently being a faithful wife and devoted mother was not enough. So I got scientific proof. Emma is Brian's daughter, there is no doubt. There never was. Patricia stood up from her chair. Natalie, we did not mean to make you feel... Did not mean to... I turned to her. You have been questioning Emma's paternity since the day she was born. Every comment about her hair color, her eye color, how she does not look like Brian. Every insinuation was clear. You thought I cheated. You thought I was passing off another man's baby as your son's. We were just concerned, Patricia said weakly. No, I said firmly. You were judgmental and cruel. And you, Laura... I turned back to Brian's sister. You planted seeds of doubt in your brother's mind. You made him question his own wife. Why were you jealous? Did you want to see my marriage fail? Laura's face was red now. I was trying to protect my brother. Protect him from what? From his faithful wife, from his own daughter. I shook my head. You were trying to cause problems. And it worked. I turned back to Brian. But that is not all. Keep looking through the envelope. Brian pulled out the next set of papers, and I watched as he realized what they were. Screenshots of text messages. His text messages with Stephanie. His face went from pale to completely white. "Natalie, where did you—" "Those are your text messages," I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "With a woman named Stephanie, messages going back months, some of them from when I was pregnant, some from the week Emma was born." Patricia gasped. Richard stood up from his chair. Laura's mouth fell open in shock. "Brian has been having an affair," I continued, my voice getting stronger with every word. "While I was home alone, exhausted taking care of our newborn baby, he was seeing another woman. While you were all questioning my faithfulness, your son and brother was the one who was cheating." "That cannot be true," Patricia said, looking at Brian with desperate eyes. "It is all right there," I said, pointing to the papers in Brian's hands. "Dates times messages. Miss you. Can't wait to see you. Last night was amazing. Should I go on?" Brian finally found his voice. "Natalie, I can explain." "Explain?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. "Explain how you doubted me while you were the one being unfaithful. Explain how you let your family humiliate me for months while you were betraying me. Explain how you researched paternity tests and made me feel like I had done something wrong when you were the one with secrets." Richard's voice boomed across the room. "Brian, is this true?" Brian could not look at anyone. He stared down at the papers in his hands, his shoulders hunched. I made a mistake." "A mistake," I said. "No, a mistake is forgetting to buy milk at the store. What you did was a choice. Multiple choices. Every time you texted her, every time you met up with her, every time you lied to me about working late. Those were all choices." I turned to address the whole table. "For months, I have endured your suspicious looks, your cruel comments, your jokes about my baby not looking like her father. I smiled through it. I tried to be the good wife, the good daughter-in-law. I bent over backwards to fit into this family, and all that time I was being faithful. I was home alone, exhausted, doing everything by myself while your son was out with another woman. And you—" I looked at Laura with disgust. "You were helping him by making me the villain." Laura was crying now. "I did not know about the affair. I swear I did not know." "But you did your best to destroy my marriage anyway," I said. "You planted doubt. You made cruel comments. You questioned my character. And for what? What did you gain from it?" Laura did not answer. She just sat there crying while Derek put an uncomfortable hand on her shoulder. I looked around the table one more time at all of these people who had made me feel small, who had questioned my worth, who had treated me like I was not good enough for their family. Emma began to fuss in my arms, and I bounced her gently, my sweet, innocent baby who had been caught in the middle of all this ugliness. "I want you all to know something," I said, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. "I was a good wife. I am a good mother, and I deserved better than this. Better than the doubt, better than the suspicion, better than the betrayal." I walked over to the sideboard, grabbed my purse, and headed toward the door. Brian stood up quickly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Natalie, wait. Please, we need to talk." I turned around one last time and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I had loved, this man I had built dreams with, this man who had destroyed everything we had. "No," I said simply. "We do not." And then I walked out the door, Emma safe in my arms, leaving behind the stunned silence and the wreckage of lies and accusations. As I strapped Emma into her car seat and drove away from that house, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in months, I felt free. I drove straight to Amy's apartment. Amy had been my best friend since college, the kind of friend who would drop everything if you needed her. I had texted her earlier in the week, telling her I might need a place to stay after the dinner, and true to form, she had immediately said yes without asking questions. When I knocked on her door, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Emma was between us, making small cooing sounds, and for a moment I just let myself be held. All the tension I had been carrying for months seemed to release at once, and I started crying. Not the angry, bitter tears from earlier, but tears of exhaustion and relief. "Come in," Amy said gently, taking Emma from my arms so I could wipe my eyes. "I made up the guest room for you." And I have wine. Over the next hour, sitting on her couch with a glass of red wine I desperately needed, I told her everything. About the DNA test, about finding Brian's affair, about the confrontation at dinner. Amy listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider with each revelation. "I cannot believe them," she finally said when I finished. "I mean, I can believe it because families can be terrible, but still, to treat you like that when Brian was the one cheating, that is hypocritical," I finished. "The word you are looking for is hypocritical." "Beyond hypocritical," Amy said. She looked over at Emma, who was sleeping peacefully in the portable bassinet Amy had borrowed from her sister. "That beautiful little girl is going to grow up knowing her mother is the strongest woman alive." I did not feel strong. I felt broken and exhausted. But I knew Amy was right about one thing. I needed to be strong for Emma. She deserved a mother who stood up for herself, who did not accept being treated poorly, who knew her own worth. That night, lying in Amy's guest room with Emma beside me, I made decisions. Real decisions about my future. In the morning, I would find a lawyer. I would start divorce proceedings. I would document everything about Brian's minimal involvement in Emma's care, his affair, his family's treatment of me. I would fight for what Emma and I deserved. My phone had been buzzing all evening with calls and texts from Brian. I had turned off the notifications, but curiosity got the better of me around midnight, and I checked the messages. "Please, come home. We can work this out. I am so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. My family feels terrible. They want to apologize. I made a terrible mistake. Please give me a chance to fix this." I turned my phone face down without responding. There was nothing to say. He had made his choices, and now I was making mine. The next morning, Amy helped me research divorce lawyers. We found a highly recommended family law attorney named Jennifer Morrison, who had great reviews and a reputation for being tough but fair. I called her office as soon as they opened on Monday morning and explained my situation. She agreed to see me that afternoon. Jennifer Morrison was in her late 40s with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to assess everything. She listened to my story without judgment, taking notes on a legal pad. When I showed her the DNA test results and the screenshots of Brian's affair, she nodded thoughtfully. "You have a very strong case," she said. "The adultery combined with documentation of him being an absent parent will work in your favor regarding custody and potentially spousal support while you get back on your feet." "I do not want his money," I said. "I just want a clean break, and I want primary custody of Emma." "We will make that happen," Jennifer assured me. "But you should think practically too. You took time off work after having Emma. You have been the primary caregiver. You are entitled to support." Over the next few days, I focused on practicalities. I opened a new bank account and transferred my savings, making sure I had access to money. I contacted the landlord of the apartment Brian and I shared and explained that I would need to break the lease. He was surprisingly understanding when I told him I was leaving my husband. I started looking for a new place to live somewhere small but safe for Emma and me. Brian continued calling and texting. His messages grew more desperate. "Please, talk to me. I love you. I will do anything." I blocked his number, temporarily needing space to think clearly without his voice in my head. On Wednesday, a week after the disastrous dinner, I finally agreed to meet him. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because we needed to discuss practical matters, and I did not want to do it through lawyers. Amy offered to watch Emma and I met Brian at a coffee shop near downtown, neutral territory where I could leave whenever I wanted. He looked terrible. His hair was messy. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes looked like he had slept in them. Part of me felt satisfaction seeing him suffer, but mostly I just felt sad. Sad for what we had lost. Sad for what Emma would never have. We sat down at a corner table, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Finally, Brian broke the silence. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice hoarse. "I did not do it for you," I replied. "We need to discuss logistics. Emma's care living arrangements, divorce proceedings." He flinched at the word divorce. "Natalie, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But can we at least try? Go to counseling, work through this." "Work through what?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Your affair, your family's treatment of me. The fact that you doubted your own daughter's paternity, Which part should we work through first? All of it, he said desperately. I will do anything. Stephanie meant nothing to me. It was a stupid mistake that I regret every single day. You know what I cannot stop thinking about, I said, leaning forward. The night Emma was born. I was in labor for 14 hours. Do you remember? He nodded, confusion in his eyes. You were texting Stephanie that night, I continued. I saw the messages. While I was in the most pain I have ever experienced in my life while I was bringing your daughter into this world, you were texting another woman, saying you wished you were with her instead. His face crumpled. Natalie. How do I come back from that? I asked. How do I ever trust you again? How do I forget that when I needed you most, you were somewhere else in your mind? I do not know. He admitted, tears running down his face. But I want to try. I love you. I love Emma. If you loved us, you would have protected us, I said. When your sister made those cruel comments, you should have shut her down. When your family questioned Emma's paternity, you should have defended me. Instead, you joined in. You laughed when Laura said maybe I had secrets. I was trying to keep the peace, he said weakly. At my expense, I shot back. You threw me to the wolves to keep your family happy. That is not love, Brian. That is cowardice. He put his head in his hands and his shoulders shook with sobs. The other people in the coffee shop were starting to stare, but I did not care. I have already filed for divorce, I told him. My lawyer will be in contact with you. I want primary custody of Emma, but I will not keep her from you. You can have visitation. She deserves to know her father, even if he is a disappointment. Please, he begged. Please, do not do this. I stood up, grabbing my purse. I am doing what I should have done months ago. I am choosing myself. I am choosing Emma, and I am walking away from people who do not respect me. I left him sitting there and walked out into the afternoon sunshine. My hands were shaking, but I felt proud of myself. I had said what I needed to say. I had stood firm in my decision. That evening, after putting Emma to bed, I received a call from an unexpected source. Patricia. Natalie, she said when I answered, her voice thick with emotion. I need to apologize. Okay, I said simply, not making it easy for her. I was wrong, she continued. We were all wrong. I let Laura's comments influence me, and I made assumptions about you that were completely unfair. I am so ashamed of how we treated you. You should be, I said. Is there any way you can forgive us? She asked. Any way we can make this right? I do not know, I answered honestly. You hurt me deeply, all of you, and what hurts most is that Brian let it happen. He chose you over me, over protecting his own wife and child. He made terrible mistakes, Patricia said. We all did, but please do not keep Emma from us. She is our granddaughter. I will not keep her from you, I assured her. Emma deserves to know her family, but things will never be the same between us. I will never trust you the way I did before. I understand, Patricia said quietly. That is more than fair. Richard called separately later that week with his own apology. He admitted that he should have stopped the comments earlier, that he had been weak and had gone along with Laura's insinuations because it was easier than confronting her. I appreciated his honesty, but it did not erase the hurt. Laura called too, crying and begging for forgiveness. She admitted that she had been jealous of my relationship with Brian, jealous that I seemed to have the perfect life while she was struggling in her own marriage to Derek. She said she had been cruel because she wanted to bring me down to her level. Her honesty was brutal, but at least it was honest. I do not forgive you yet, I told her. Maybe someday I will for my own peace of mind, but right now I need distance. What you did was malicious, and it had real consequences. You almost destroyed my family. I know, she sobbed. I am so sorry. Being sorry is not enough, I said. You need to look at yourself and figure out why you felt the need to hurt someone who never did anything to you. After that call, I blocked Laura's number. I was not ready to deal with her yet, and maybe I never would be. The first month after leaving Brian was the hardest and the easiest all at once. I found a small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood with good schools nearby for when Emma would be older. It was not much, just a modest space on the second floor of an older building, but it was ours. I painted Emma's corner of the bedroom a soft lavender color and hung twinkle lights above her crib. I put up photos of the two of us, pictures that made me smile, reminders of the life we were building together. The routine was different now. I woke up each morning with Emma, fed her, and settled her in her playpen while I worked on design projects. I had reached out to old clients and new ones, slowly rebuilding my business that I had let slide during the chaos of my marriage falling apart. It felt good to focus on something creative, something that was entirely mine. Amy came over several times a week, always bringing coffee or food or just her company. We would sit on my small couch while Emma played on a blanket on the floor, and we would talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes I cried, sometimes I laughed, sometimes I just felt numb. Amy never judged, never pushed, just existed beside me as I figured out who I was without Brian. I started therapy too. My therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Sarah Chin, helped me process the betrayal and the hurt. She taught me that what happened was not my fault, that I had not done anything to deserve the doubt and cruelty. She helped me see that standing up for myself at that dinner was not an act of anger, but an act of self-preservation. "You reclaimed your narrative," Dr. Chin told me during one session. "They were trying to write your story for you, painting you as unfaithful and untrustworthy. You took the pen back and told the truth." That image stuck with me. I was writing my own story now, one where I was not a victim, but a survivor. A woman who knew her worth and refused to accept less. I joined a mother's group at the community center near my apartment. It met every Thursday morning, and it was a mix of moms in all different situations. Some were married, some were single, some were divorced. We talked about everything from sleep schedules to potty training to relationship struggles. It felt good to be around other women who understood the exhaustion and joy of motherhood without judgment. One of the moms, a woman named Jessica, who had a daughter just a month older than Emma, became a close friend. She was going through a divorce too, and we bonded over our shared experiences of rebuilding our lives. We started meeting for coffee on weekends, our daughters playing together while we talked. Emma was thriving. At 6 months old, she was rolling over consistently, starting to sit up on her own and babbling constantly. She had the most infectious giggle, and I recorded it on my phone so I could listen to it when I was having hard days. Every milestone she reached felt like a victory, proof that we were going to be okay, despite everything. Brian had visitation every other weekend. The first few exchanges were incredibly awkward. He would come to my apartment to pick Emma up, and we would barely speak beyond the essentials. "She needs to eat every 3 hours. Here is her diaper bag. She has been a little fussy today." It was mechanical and cold, but it was necessary. I could tell he was trying to be a good father during his time with Emma. He would send me photos of them together, her in his arms at the park, sitting in a high chair, eating baby food, sleeping peacefully in a crib he had bought for his new apartment. Part of me appreciated that he was making an effort. Despite everything, Emma deserved a father who loved her. His relationship with Stephanie had ended, apparently. He told me this during one of the pickups, as if I would care, or as if it would change anything. "We are not together anymore," he said. "It was a mistake from the beginning." "Okay," I said, my voice neutral. I did not tell him that I already knew that Stephanie had actually reached out to me on social media with a long apology about how she did not know he was married at first and how she felt terrible about everything. I had deleted her message without responding. Her guilt was not my problem to manage. The divorce was finalized after 3 months. It was surprisingly quick, probably because Brian did not fight me on anything. I got primary custody of Emma with generous visitation for him. I got to keep my car and my personal belongings. We split our minimal savings, and he agreed to pay child support. Jennifer, my lawyer, told me I could have pushed for more, but I just wanted it to be over. I wanted to close this chapter and move forward. The day the divorce was finalized, I took Emma to a park near our apartment. It was a beautiful autumn day, the leaves turning gold and red, the air crisp but not cold. I pushed her in a baby swing, watching her face light up with delight every time she went higher. Around us, other families were playing, children laughing, parents chatting. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting of perfect American life. But I knew better now. I knew that perfect-looking families often hid pain and secrets. I knew that happiness was not about appearances, but about authenticity. And sitting there watching my daughter experience pure joy in such a simple moment I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. I was not looking for another relationship. The idea of trusting someone again felt impossible, but I was okay with that. I had Emma. I had my work, I had my friends, and I had myself. That was enough. 8 months after the disastrous dinner, I received an unexpected package in the mail. It was from Patricia. Inside was a beautiful handmade quilt, clearly something she had spent hours creating. The pattern was intricate, done in soft pinks and purples, and in one corner, Emma's name was embroidered in delicate script. There was a note attached. Dear Natalie, I have been working on this for months, wanting to find the right way to tell you how sorry I am. Words feel inadequate, so I made this for Emma. Every stitch represents my regret for how we treated you and my hope that someday you might let us be a real family to her. I know we cannot undo the past. I know we hurt you deeply. But please know that we love Emma and we respect you. You are an incredible mother and a strong woman. Brian was a fool to lose you. If you ever feel ready, we would love to see more of Emma. No pressure, no judgment, just love. With deep regret and hope, Patricia, I folded the note and looked at the quilt, running my fingers over the careful stitching. It was beautiful, clearly made with love and care. I was not ready to forgive completely, but I appreciated the gesture. It felt sincere in a way that words alone had not. I texted Patricia a simple thank you and told her that she and Richard could visit Emma the following weekend. When they came, I stayed in the apartment with them rather than leaving like I had been doing. We sat in my small living room, Emma on the floor, playing with blocks, and we talked. Really talked for the first time since everything fell apart. Patricia cried as she apologized again, and this time I could see the genuine remorse in her eyes. Richard admitted that he had been passive when he should have been protective. They both promised to do better to be the grandparents Emma deserved. She looks so much like you, Patricia said at one point, watching Emma try to stack blocks. She has your eyes, your smile. I am sorry I ever made you feel like that was a problem. She looks like herself, I said gently, and that is all that matters. They left after an hour, hugging me carefully at the door, thanking me for giving them another chance. I was not sure what our relationship would look like going forward, but I was willing to try for Emma's sake. Laura, however, remained blocked on my phone. I was not ready to face her yet, and I was not sure I ever would be. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. Emma turned 1 year old on a sunny day in March. I threw her a small party at my apartment, inviting Amy, Jessica, and her daughter, a few other moms from the mothers group, and yes, Brian, Patricia, and Richard. It felt strange having Brian there in this space that was mine, but I wanted Emma to have both her parents present for this milestone. I had baked a small cake myself, rainbow-colored layers that had taken me 3 tries to get right. Emma sat in her high chair wearing a little birthday girl outfit, a tiny paper crown on her head that kept sliding to the side. When we sang Happy Birthday and I brought out the cake with a single candle, her eyes went wide with wonder. She smashed her hands into the cake with pure joy, getting frosting all over her face and hair, and everyone laughed. It was a real laugh, not the cruel laughter from that dinner a year ago, but genuine happiness at watching a child experience something magical. I took 1,000,000 photos wanting to capture this moment, this proof that we had made it through the darkness and found light on the other side. After everyone left and I was cleaning up, Brian lingered at the door. "Thank you for including me," he said quietly. "I know I do not deserve it." "You are her father," I said simply. "She deserves to have you in her life even if you are not in mine." He nodded, his eyes sad. "I think about what I lost every day, not just you, but the family we could have been." "So do I admitted. "But we cannot go back. We can only move forward." "You are doing an amazing job with her," he said. "I see how happy she is, how loved. You are a great mother." "I know," I said, not with arrogance, but with simple truth. I had learned to own my worth, to not diminish myself or my accomplishments. He left, and I finished cleaning up the apartment. Emma was already asleep in her crib, exhausted from all the excitement. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, looking around at the life I had built. It was not the life I had planned. It was not perfect. But it was real, and it was mine. I thought back to that night at the dinner table when I had stood up and placed that envelope in front of Brian. That moment had changed everything. Not because it had ended my marriage, but because it had been the first time in months that I had stood up for myself. I had refused to accept their narrative, their accusations, their cruelty. I had spoken my truth and walked away with my dignity intact. That was the moment I had started to reclaim myself. Over the following months, I continued to grow. My design business picked up significantly. I got a contract with a major startup to redesign their entire brand identity, my biggest project ever. The money was good, and more importantly, the creative fulfillment was exactly what I needed. I was pouring myself into work that mattered to me, creating things that made me proud. Emma continued to hit milestones. She took her first steps at 13 months, wobbling across the living room into my waiting arms. I cried happy tears, wishing someone else was there to witness it, but also feeling proud that I had been the one to see it. I was the one who was there for every moment, every achievement, every setback. Brian was consistent with his visitation, and our co-parenting relationship settled into a comfortable rhythm. We were not friends, probably never would be, but we were civil and focused on Emma's well-being. That was enough. I started dating again tentatively when Emma was 15 months old. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with men I met through friends or online. It felt strange to be dating in my 30s after years of being married, but it was also empowering. I knew what I wanted now. I knew what I would not tolerate. I knew my worth. One evening after putting Emma to bed, I sat down with my journal, something Dr. Chin had encouraged me to do. I wrote about the journey I had been on from that terrible dinner to where I was now. I wrote about the pain and the healing, the anger and the forgiveness, the fear and the strength. And then I wrote about the lessons I had learned. Lessons I would one day teach Emma when she was old enough to understand. Never let anyone make you doubt your own truth. I had known I was faithful, but I had let their doubts seep into my mind, making me question myself. The DNA test was not really for me. It was for them. And in needing to prove myself to people who should have simply believed me, I had learned that sometimes the problem is not you, it is them. Blood does not equal loyalty. Family is supposed to support you, lift you up, defend you. But sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who hurt you most. And it is okay to walk away from family members who are toxic. You do not owe anyone your presence just because of genetics. Teaching Emma about self-worth would be my greatest mission as her mother. I wanted her to grow up knowing that she should never accept disrespect, that her voice mattered, that she deserved to be believed and valued. I wanted her to be strong enough to walk away from anyone who tried to diminish her, whether it was a partner, a friend, or even family. I closed my journal and went to check on Emma one last time before bed. She was sleeping peacefully, her little chest rising and falling with each breath, her tiny hand curled under her cheek. Looking at her, I felt overwhelming love and fierce protectiveness. The world would try to doubt her someday. Someone would try to make her feel small or unworthy. Someone would betray her trust. It was inevitable. But I would make sure she had the tools to stand up for herself, to know her truth, and to walk away from anyone who did not value her. That dinner had changed everything, but not in the way Brian's family had intended. They had tried to shame me, to make me the villain in their narrative. Instead, they had awakened something in me. Strength I did not know I had. Courage to stand alone. Faith in my own worth. I was not the same woman who had sat at that table enduring their cruel jokes. I had been broken down and rebuilt myself stronger and more authentic than before. I had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept someone else's version of your story. Now, as I sit here telling you this story, Emma is 2 years old. She talks in full sentences, has opinions about everything, and insists on wearing her sparkly shoes every single day, even when they do not match her outfit. She is strong-willed and independent, and absolutely sure of herself. I see my strength reflected in her, and it makes me proud. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled that dinner. They wonder if I should have confronted Brian privately, if I should have tried to keep the peace, if exposing everything in front of his family was too harsh. My answer is always the same. No, I do not regret it. For months, I had been silent while they questioned me. I had smiled through their cruel comments, tried to be the bigger person, attempted to fit into a family that did not want me to fit. I had swallowed my hurt and my anger, hoping that if I was just patient enough, kind enough, understanding enough, they would finally accept me. But silence in the face of injustice is not peace. It is surrender. That night, I took back my voice. I told my truth in the only way they would hear it, with undeniable proof that could not be argued away or dismissed. I held up a mirror to their cruelty and made them look at themselves. And yes, it was uncomfortable. Yes, it was harsh. But it was also necessary. Sometimes love requires walking away. Sometimes strength looks like knowing when to stop fighting for people who will never fight for you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is choose yourself. I learned that I cannot control what other people think or say about me. I can only control my response. And my response was to stand up, speak truth, and walk out with my daughter and my dignity intact. The relationship with Brian's family is cordial now, but distant. Patricia and Richard see Emma regularly, and they treat me with respect. We will never be close the way I once hoped we could be, but we have reached a peaceful coexistence. Laura and I have not spoken since that night. I heard through Patricia that she and Derek are in marriage counseling, working through their own issues. I hope she finds peace, but her journey is not mine to manage. Brian is a decent father to Emma. He has never missed a visitation, and he is trying to be better. We will never be together again. The trust is too shattered, but I can appreciate that he loves our daughter and is working to be present in her life. As for me, I am building a life that feels authentic. My design business is thriving. I have genuine friendships with people who support and value me. I am teaching my daughter about strength and self-worth every single day. And I am learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, but surely. The scar from that period of my life will always be there. You do not go through betrayal like that without being changed. But scars are proof of healing. They show that you were wounded but survived. And sometimes what we learn from our deepest wounds becomes our greatest wisdom. If you have ever been doubted by those who claimed to love you, remember this. Your worth is not determined by their belief in you. It is determined by your own unwavering faith in yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand up, speak your truth, and walk away with your head held high. That envelope did not just silence them that night. It freed me. It was the beginning of choosing myself, of refusing to accept a narrative that was not true, of standing firm in my own integrity, even when everyone around me doubted it. I gave him that envelope not out of revenge, but out of self-respect, and that made all the difference. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against people who were supposed to support you? Have you ever felt doubted in your own family? Drop a comment below and share your story. Your voice matters, and your experience could help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. And if you believe in standing up for yourself and knowing your worth, subscribe to this channel, because we share stories of real people facing real challenges and finding their strength. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it is a friend who is being doubted. Maybe it is someone in a difficult family situation. Maybe it is just someone who needs a reminder that they are stronger than they think. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope that wherever you are in your journey, you know that you are worthy of respect, belief, and love. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. And remember, you have the power to write your own story. Until next time.